The base is dropped on another edition of Soccer Down Here. It's March 19th. It's a Thursday. We will be taking your Thursday thoughts this morning on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. Let us know what you're thinking about on another day without live sports. And I think some people are starting to feel the effects of that, me included. It's just a little weird. But we are all doing the best we can with everything going on, so that's why we're here. We're going to try later today, I don't know what time yet, but maybe late in the afternoon, we're going to try to do a watch-along on our Twitch page, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere, of the 1986 World Cup final. I wanted to pick something different, first off. I wanted to pick a game that meant a little something to me, too. That was the first final that I watched. No, it's just the first final I watched. It was what made me fall in love with the game. I mean, it's a big game, and it's a game that probably a lot of people haven't seen. So we're going to try to set that up. Stay tuned to our social media channels, especially Twitter, for updates on what time. But I'm leaning to like 4 o'clock or so to do this. So stay tuned. We'll try to drop that out for you. But if you watch stuff on Twitch, you kind of know how it works. There'll be a comment section. You can chime in there. I think the idea is to have a few of the SDH folks with audio over top of it. So the commentary will be in the background, but we'll be doing it almost like a director's commentary of your favorite movie on DVD or something, where that's what we're shooting for here. So stay tuned. Trying to add some different things like that to keep us all from going a little crazy. We're doing our best.
Unless you were already crazy to begin with, and then, it adds to it. I think
I gave up on your craziness a long time ago, John.
Thank you. I'm trying to remember the last time that I watched the 86 World Cup final from beginning to end. So
1986?
Probably, yeah, because I think I was in a hotel room, and it was, I think if I remember correctly, I was in a hotel room watching it back in 1986. So, remembering what hotel rooms were like in 1986 at the same time. So, So no, this will be fun. It'll be fun to hang out with folks.
Yes, stay tuned. We'll try to get that rolling.
But what else is on your mind as we get toward 1986 this morning?
Well, the Premier League is meeting today to try to figure out, if they can, at least what things are going to look like for them. So, emergency board meeting via conference call. They're expected to reiterate their commitment to completing the season, according to the BBC. It's just hard to tell. One thing that did come out of the BBC article is that they're understanding that if the restrictions on mass gatherings are not lifted, Premier League officials are open to the idea of staging matches behind closed doors. We've talked about this a decent bit. Like, when leagues tried to do this before, it didn't have any impact because, there were already people infected with coronavirus. So, yeah, you kept fans out of the building, but players and staff were putting themselves at risk. You've got to make sure that both teams and everybody involved with putting on the match has a clean bill of health. You've got to make sure that the venue is safe and responsible, and people can't get in, and people can't get things infected in the venue. So there's a lot of work to do before you could even get to this point. But as we've said many times, when you're talking about the Premier League in this, there's a lot of money on the line, and you need to find a way to get this done. The BBC reiterated some of the nonsense that's been going on. Karen Brady of West Ham saying the campaign should be declared null and void. Paul Barber, chief executive of Brighton, said that it would be unjust if Liverpool were denied the title. He suggested increasing the league to 22 teams for 2020/21. And you've got some other movement in the world's game around that kind of idea. The Japanese J-League is, I want to make sure I get the right information here. I think that's what they are proposing to do. Yes, Japan Times, Jonathan Tannenwald retweeted this morning. The J-League has announced it will not relegate anyone. Promotion from the second and third divisions will remain. The J1, the top flight in the J-League, will have 20 teams for the 2021 season temporarily. So now you're starting to get a few leagues that have made the decision, all right, we're not going to hurt any clubs by relegating them, but we're not going to take the promotion away, and we're going to figure things out on a temporary basis. 56 J-League teams agreed to this extraordinary move in a league executive committee meeting earlier yesterday. So you're going to have to see groups get creative. The BBC has reported that, we'll see what happens in this meeting today. I don't know if that idea has made much progress yet in England. And as we've seen with VAR, the Premier League has a tendency to think about doing things on its own and think that they might know a little bit better than everybody else. So I'm really curious to see what option they try to pick to solve this. Because, it's problem solving. You've got to come up with something. How are you going to take this route? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to end up choosing, because it feels like you get strong arguments all over the map about what's going to happen in England, and I don't know which way they're going to go. Yeah,
and you mentioned the one suggestion by Brighton about bringing two up. And I say this knowing going in that you're going to upset somebody in this process somewhere. And the notion that you would bring two up would translate into the two teams, in theory, from the championship that would be in the automatic promotion spots. But when it comes to that third spot, that is traditionally the one that is done through the playoff, and you have teams 3 through 6, and they'll sit there and they'll knock each other around and figure out who's going to be that third spot. It's more than just those 4 teams this year. You have a couple of teams who are hovering below and trying to fight their way into those 3 through 6 spots. So, you're looking at probably 7 teams for those 4 spots right now to try to get in to be that third team. And those 7 teams would be the teams that would be upset because they're being left out of the discussion. But once again,
you're jumping to a conclusion here, and this is where I think you got to avoid these situations. First off, we don't know if it would just be 2 teams. We don't know what it would look like. But we also don't know how the season finishes. There's justifiable frustration, and then there's frustration that you got to kind of take with a grain of salt at this point. If they're not going to relegate anybody, I don't see them having 3 teams go up. You're not going to have an odd number of teams, right?
Nope.
So, okay. So you're going to either go 2 or 4. You could go either way. The championship has 24 teams. You're going to play a 46-game Premier League schedule? Probably not, but then what are you going to do? Who knows? That's the whole thing here. It's so much easier right now to say, well, that's stupid, well, that's stupid, well, that's stupid, well, you can't do that, you can't do that. Okay, then what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. Well, then you got to come up with something, because there's not going to be a perfect way through this. Because declaring the season null and void and not having anybody move is not right. It's not about Liverpool. If they don't get to lift a trophy in front of people, we all know that they've had one of the best years in Premier League history. We all know they were the champions. And it's not what you want, but we all know that. It's the bottom end of the table. It's some of the European spots and stuff like that where it gets tricky. One, we don't know how many games you're actually going to get to play. We don't know if you're going to get to finish the schedule out or not. If you do, and then you know at this point that, hey, look, this is what it is. It's 2 teams that are going up. Fight it out. Nobody's coming down, so there's no relegation spots. You finish in the top 2, you go up. That's it. That's all you can do. And that's what's going to happen here. People really, honestly, in all these positions, and this is where the governing bodies are so important, whether it's the league, whether it's the FA, whether it's UEFA, whether it's FIFA, so on and so forth, you've got to try to create the most fair system you can. But you also have to understand that these are extraordinary circumstances. And you can't have an odd number of teams go up. I don't think they would do that. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. You could. You're just going to have somebody with a bye every week, which is not a good format. But if you want to be truly as fair as you can, that's what you would do. You would have 3 go up. You would have the exact same promotion setup that you always have. And then you just have to deal with the scheduling as you deal with the scheduling the next year. It would be messy, and it just is what it is. I don't think that's the right route. I think it's better to go with 2 up. I mean, you could go with 4 up and add a spot to go up, and then you're just inviting all kinds of chaos. But I don't know. There's not an easy way, and it's easy to pick holes in every different way. I mean, having nobody go up, nobody go down, pick holes in it. Having 2 go up, you're going to have teams that are going to be pissed off. You can pick holes in it. Having 3 go up, we just picked a bunch of holes in it. You have somebody sitting out every match week. Having 4 go up, if you're going to do a normal season, you're going to have 46 games. Does anybody want that in the Premier League? Probably not. So there's no right answer. That's where we're at with this, and that's where every league is going to have to figure this out. A little bit more about the J League, and they have it's an 18-team league, so this is more like the Bundesliga in terms of size and how it looks. They're also probably a bit closer to getting teams back on the field as well, and maybe they have a little bit better sense of what's coming up next. Normal circumstances in the J League, 2 go up, 2 go down. A 3rd spot is decided in a season-ending tournament. The 3rd up and down is in a tournament, which I need to read about because that sounds really interesting. The new plan, temporarily, top 2 go up from J2 to J1 and from J3 to J2. That temporarily takes J1 to 20 teams, J2 to 22 teams. After the 21 season, 4 teams would get relegated from J1, 2 would get promoted from J2. So that would get you back to normal. So they've made the change. It's fairly similar to the 2 up instead of 3 that I guess Brighton has said. I don't know if they specifically said 2 up. That had been rumored at one point, but with everything going around, it's hard to tell how much is just total rumor, how much is total speculation, how much is an actual proposal. But this that the J League has on the table, that would be what, John, you just talked about with that 3rd spot that normally teams would have an opportunity to win. You're taking that away to just have 2 go up.
And I'm feverishly trying to read up on the competition format for the J League promotion relegation series here.
You always pick the weirdest things. Whenever it comes up, you pick the weirdest things to jump down the rabbit hole on.
Yep. 2 90-minute games must be played. First game held in the home stadium of the J2 club. Second game takes place in the home stadium of the J1.
Well, I'm glad they're not playing one game as a 60-minute game. That's good to know.
Yeah. Clubs are tied, aggregate score, extra time, penalty kicks take place, extra time, golden goal.
Series. Just simplify.
Yeah, basically.
It's a home and away. We know how these work.
So it's a home and away.
There we go.
So there you go.
Well, okay, wait a minute. So there's 4 teams that are fighting it out for 1 spot, right? Or is it just the third team in the J2 playing the 16th team in J1 in a home and away?
Under usual circumstances, 16th place J1, third place J2.
Okay. So it's just straight up a playoff between those two. The winner stays up, the losers in J2.
Yeah, and then it gets into qualification things, and it's even muddier at that point. But at its most basic, it's that one. It's 16th place J1, third place J2.
Okay, I don't know why it would be more difficult, but all right. Welcome to
if the team can't financially meet the requirements of promotion, that's when it gets to.
There you go.
Muddy.
Okay. Yeah, and that doesn't typically come up in other large leagues, because if you're in the second division, you're eligible to go up. Now, it does happen in England from going conference to League Two, the fourth division. We've seen over the years teams not get the opportunity to go up because of whatever reason, whether it's venue, whether it's financials, what have you. Mexico is going through that right now, and everybody freaked out about Mexico, saying they're not going to have promotion relegation. I also saw, I think, recently that none of the teams in the Ascenso meet the requirements to go up. So they wouldn't go up anyway right now. So that is a factor in different leagues. And, you know, when we've gone through the hypothetical craziness of what that could look like in the United States, that's been something that's come up, is financially it's a big difference. And it's too big of a gap in the United States right now. In other countries, it's a gap that some teams can meet and some can't. You know, Japan has those requirements. Mexico has requirements. Others have requirements. In some countries, it's a no-brainer that you have the ability to move up because you have the infrastructure to do so.
And, yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been the example of, and I guess it's, you know, proximity with Liga MX and knowing those situations of those teams and promotion relegation. That's the one that I'm the most familiar with.
Well, I'm not even getting into what happens in Mexico often, where owners buy the team that got promoted, right. and yeah, that's a whole nother level. You just get some teams that could go up because of what they do on the field, but they don't qualify to go up because they're not financially stable enough. Then sometimes that spot gets sold, and that's where it gets all kinds of madness. Bigger picture with Japan, and these timelines I think are important when you're looking at what could happen in Europe, what could happen in the United States. The final decision right now to restart the J-League on April 3rd, because that's the date that's been set, is March 25th. The J-League schedule is roughly like MLS. They played their first round of matches on the weekend of February 21st. They suspended competitions 2 days after that round completed on the 25th. The round was Friday to Sunday, so the 21st through the 23rd. So they suspended competition after one round of games, and they're looking to restart on April 3rd. They're going to make that decision on March 25th. The J-League and the Japanese Baseball League they have a joint task force, and they're holding a briefing on March 23rd, and we'll probably get an update there. So that's one to keep an eye on. The Chinese Super League is another one to keep an eye on. I think their scheduled start date or restart date is later in April, maybe a couple weeks after that. So we'll see if those leagues can get back underway, but the J-League, even only 1 week in, has decided to change its structure for the year. Nobody's getting relegated. Only 2 teams are coming up instead of 3. Or 2.5, essentially, because you have a playoff for that final spot. We'll see what the Premier League does. You're going to get a bunch of bluster. You're going to get a bunch of craziness. We'll see if Karen Brady keeps going with her campaign about declaring the season null and void. And we'll see what happens in England with that meeting going on today.
Yeah, Ricky Ricardo has linked to a Premier League release, and it was punched out today. Don't have a timestamp on it from the league in and of itself, but Here's what the Prem has said. FA rules and regs state that, quote, the season shall terminate not later than June 1. Each competition shall, within the limit laid down by the FA, determine the length of its own playing season. However, the FA's board has agreed for this limit to be extended indefinitely for the 2019-2020 season in relation to professional football. Additionally, we have collectively agreed that the professional game in England will be further postponed until no earlier than 30 April.
Yeah, I mean, that's no surprise. That's absolutely no surprise, and that's still incredibly optimistic. One thing that, again, this is what seems to happen with this league. UEFA came out and said that they wanted leagues completed by June 30th. There's no reference to that here. And in the BBC article from earlier, before the meeting, and this is probably what came out of the meeting, there's no reference to it, and there's a lot of, time limit extended indefinitely, and if you have to extend contracts past June 30th, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are you going to get into a situation, which is what UEFA can't deal with, which is what the game should not be dealing with? There needs to be solidarity. There needs to be solidarity. Everybody should be on the same page here. You shouldn't get statements like this, and this is incredibly frustrating. The Premier League should come out and say, per this week's meeting with UEFA, explain the whole thing about June 1st, and then say, per this week's meeting with UEFA, right now the plan is for all European leagues to complete their seasons by June 30th. Now, remember, UEFA did build in a little bit of wiggle room about canceling, and I believe they already have, the qualifiers for Champions League and Europa League for the next year's competition that would take place in July. So you've got an extra month of wiggle room. Now, contracts and things, you're going to have to figure that out. But right now, the statement from UEFA is June 30. That's when you want to be done. Why is the Premier League not saying that in this statement? You are confusing people, you are complicating the situation, and you're doing what you've always had a tendency to do, and maybe I'm just frustrated with it because of the way they've handled VAR, thinking that they know better than everybody else. Stay on the same page, because all of it is interconnected. And it's frustrating that you're getting everybody kind of going out on their own after you just had a UEFA meeting. It needs to be consistent. I don't know. I mean, nobody knows exactly when they're going to restart. That's not my issue here. It's the fact that when UEFA is creating a kind of guideline about wanting to get the season completed by June 30th, but also building in a little bit of wiggle room to go deeper if you have to, why is the Premier League just coming out and saying it can be extended indefinitely? You're creating confusion. It's the same thing we talked about when the NBA made their initial announcement. Some people read their initial announcement when they suspended the season as, well, the season's over. That was how a lot of people reacted. And that's not what they said. They just didn't clarify in their statement that we're taking a break while we see what's going to happen. You have to be really clear in this. And I'm really disappointed with the Premier League creating more confusion here with their statement. Just say that this is where we're at right now. This is what UEFA has said. This is what we're trying to do. We'll know more soon. That's it.
I mean, that would make the most sense, to sit there and have a unified message from all governing bodies of individual nations and their sports to tie into what UEFA has been saying. But no, to your point about what the Premier League, Premier League's just kind of sitting there and going off and saying something different instead of having a unified message with UEFA and everybody else.
And that's the thing is, okay, they want to get started. They're going to suspend all the way to April 30th. Okay, that is kind of obvious at this point. I think it's a little optimistic for them, but we'll find out. But to just not put any kind of a close date on it, you don't even have to say that's what it definitely is. You just need to reference the UEFA statement, because UEFA and the game as a whole in Europe cannot get into a situation where one league decides we have to play every single game. I don't care if it takes till September, and then we'll start the next season when we start the next season. And then others are like, no, we're going to try to get it done so we can keep the timeline for next season as close as possible, and we can start the European competitions in as good of a time period as we can. You can't have that. You've got to have some main calendar here. So just be clear. That's all I'm asking in this, is just be clear about what's going to happen. And it could be what they're talking about behind the scenes. We don't know. We weren't in the meeting. But I wish you would put clear statements out and not say that the season would be extended indefinitely. Say that right now the goal is to meet UEFA's guidelines of completing the season by June 30. And that will be reassessed at a later date. Done. Then at least we know, and there's consistency.
Further word from ESPN coming out of the meeting. Sources tell the network that the meeting, which involved senior figures from all 20 top-flight clubs and Premier League chief executive Richard Masters, was unlikely to result in a firm decision on the outcome of outstanding domestic issues such as relegation, league placings, and any confirmation of Liverpool as this season's champions.
The longer you don't have some kind of idea on what the promotion relegation is going to look like, the more it's going to get bad. The J League is 1 week into their season. They have already made their change. Everybody knows what's going on. If you wait, it's going to get bad. You're going to get lobbying. You're going to get all kinds of arguments back and forth. You're going to make it worse. But, again, why am I not surprised? These people don't want to look at pitch side monitors for situations involving VAR because they think they know better. It's just not a good look.
And we haven't had folks comment yet on the Premier League decisions, but we do have some folks on Twitter this morning with some thoughts.
Cool. What else we got?
And this is definitely going to put your memory banks into a bit of a discussion here, or part of the discussion.
Uh-oh.
No, this is a good one. Yesterday, ESPN FC used as part of their Throwback Wednesday, which doesn't have any kind of alliterative mention to it, the 35-yard run and shoot for the shootout. So they showed video of that, and Tony Meola saving pretty much everything that was thrown his way. Drew Gano comes in this morning, and he says he'd love a show about this and other alternative things MLS has done through the years. And Drew says, like you, Jason, I'd love to see this come back, meaning the 35-yard run and shoot.
I'd love to see that instead of a penalty shootout. I don't want to see it come back to decide a draw. A draw is a draw, and as we say many times when we talk about games that finish in a draw, there are good draws, there are bad draws. Draws are an important part of the game, in my opinion. So I don't want it to come back in that regard, but I like the 35-yard shootout better than I like a penalty shootout. I do. I think it's a more fair way to decide things. It's hard because there's no easy way to decide it. You run into fitness issues where you have to call time on the game. They can't just keep playing indefinitely. It's not feasible. Could you see a situation kind of like the National Hockey League where you remove players after a certain period? I guess, but do you really want to see like 8v8 playing after 120 minutes of action on a huge field? Not really. I don't know if that's any better. So I like the 35-yard shootout thing, and that wasn't even an MLS creation. That was an old North American Soccer League creation. Maybe next week we'll dig into how that came together, because it wasn't at the beginning of the NASL. It emerged kind of later on. But MLS incorporated it, brought it in. They used it to resolve draws up until, I think, the end of the 99 season, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been 2000. I think it was 2000, actually. I saw it firsthand, the effect of it here in Atlanta in '95 in the A-League, the year before MLS started. They used that, and the way that their point system worked, you got 3 points for a win, you got 2 points for a shootout win, you got 1 point for a shootout loss, you got nothing for a regular loss. The Atlanta Ruckus that year were the masters of the shootout. I believe, off the top of my head, they went 12-1 in the regular season in the shootout. So they were picking up that extra point so many times. That's what put them in the playoffs. They were the number 4 team. It was a 6-team league. It was a really big-time league in First Division in 1995 in the United States. But 4 of the 6 went to the playoffs. The Ruckus finished 4th. If you went on a traditional scoring system with no shootouts and draws, they would not have made the playoffs. So they get into the playoffs, and they're the number 4 seed. They're playing the top seed, Montreal Impact, in the first round. First game's at home because it was a best 2 of 3. It wasn't a 2-game series. It was just 2 of 3. Winner, you win 2 games, you move on. And you could win games by shootout, and they counted the same. So, first game in Atlanta, it's a draw after regulation time. You go to the shootout. Atlanta wins the shootout. Second game in Montreal, they won like 3-0 or 4-0. They just demolished the Ruckus. Third game in Montreal, draw, goes to a shootout. Atlanta wins. They go to the final. They play the Seattle Sounders. First game in Atlanta, Adams Stadium, goes to a shootout. Atlanta wins. Second game in Seattle, Sounders throttle the Ruckus. So we're going to a third game. What happens? It goes to a draw. It goes to a shootout. And finally, the Ruckus lost in the shootout. And they lost the title on a shootout. But they went for the year, I want to say, including those playoff wins, they won 15 of 17 shootouts.
Damn.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And it wasn't just one goalkeeper either. Moon Young Yi was the goalkeeper who had the best success in the shootout, and he played most of the games late. But Bill Andraki was the goalkeeper earlier on, and he had good success in the shootout. The master of the shootout, and it's not a player you would expect. A lot of times I think you look at attacking players as this, but the closer for the Ruckus in the shootout that year was John Doyle, defender. Just automatic. And it wasn't like anything fancy or any like crazy approach. It was just he was so good at driving forward, drawing the goalkeeper out to him, and then slipping it past. And did that in both of the home shootout wins. He was the one who scored the winning attempt and put the team on to give him the win. So that was the year, probably more than any year in MLS, that the shootout skewed the standings. And it's the season that a lot of people pointed to as this is why you shouldn't have the shootout. This is why draws need to stand as draws. Because the Ruckus were not a good team that year. They should have finished 5th out of 6. But because of the shootout and because of their success there, and they put a lot of time into practicing it because that was what they could control, they advanced, and they got all the way to the final, and they got all the way to a shootout in the third game of the final, and then they lost.
I mean, that's just crazy. But, once again, you sit there and you look at the rules and figure out, okay, how can we try to best take advantage of what's in front of us? And the Ruckus did that.
Well, they had a bunch of injuries, too. I mean, you were struggling to field complete teams by the end of that season, so they had to keep games tight. They had a strong defense. I mean, you have John Doyle, who was a national team level player at that league, playing in the A-League. Doyle was immense. One of the best seasons that I've ever seen from a center back. It's also a little bit easier if you're John Doyle, who I think is like 6'3", 6'2", big guy, playing as a center back at Adams Stadium where the field's like 60 yards wide. Because, I mean, everything's going to find its way to Doyle in the middle of the park, and he's just cleaning people out. He's winning everything in the air. He was great. That season actually played him back into the national team picture because he had kind of fallen out of it after the 90 World Cup, and he wasn't part of the 94 team, but he got back into the national team picture after that year. Other things MLS did that were different, they did the countdown clock, and I can't remember if they did that all the way up through the changes to follow the world standard or not. This is another one that a lot of people who don't follow the game and come to it from the outside and they watch a game, the clock is something that bothers people if they don't understand it. And I get it. I mean, there's no other sport that I know of. I don't remember how rugby does their clock and how like Australian rules football does theirs and stuff like that. But there's no American sport, let's put it that way, that does a clock the way that soccer does. And specifically does a clock that you don't know exactly when the game's going to end. In games with a clock. I'm not including baseball in this because we know how baseball ends. Soccer, you don't know. You're waiting on the referee to blow the whistle. Is it time maybe to talk about that? Is it time maybe to figure out a better way? You have a video assistant referee now, and we've talked about this with the role of VAR, where maybe they should get involved in setting that time that is added back on the clock. I'm good with doing it that way. I'm good with adding the time back on. I think that's a cleaner way of doing it than doing what we see in the high school game and in the college game, where the ref will signal to the timekeeper to stop the clock. And if the ref feels like the clock should be stopped during the game, they stop the clock. And how many times do you see the signal and the clock doesn't get stopped exactly? Then you got to reset it, and then it's a waste of time. Should you have the VAR handle this for the referee? The referee's not worried about it anymore. The VAR is keeping time, keeping the amount that needs to be added back on, and rounding it up or down, whichever way you want to go. And right before the 90-minute mark, announcing, the fourth official puts up the board, and it's announced in the stadium that 4 minutes will be added to the clock, and then you just have the clock go. And if you want to have the clock stop during that period, because we had this in one of the high school games this season, John, where I think they've changed it in Georgia high school to where in the final 5 minutes on substitutions, the clock stops.
Right.
Because you would see coaches be pretty squirrely with it and make a bunch of subs late as they're trying to run the clock, and the clock wouldn't stop. So now the clock stops and they make the signal. So if we want to do it, if we're going to reimagine how rules work, since we've got nothing else to do, that would be off the top of my head the way I'd do it. I'd want to see it play out a little bit to see if it works, but 90 minutes is the same as it is. You get to the end of the half, the VAR makes the determination on how much time to add, and then that time is added to the clock. You know how much time there is to play, and when the referee wants to stop the clock in that stoppage time, that's when they make their signal and the clock gets stopped. It would take a lot of getting used to. Traditionalists' heads would explode, but would it be better that way? I don't know. I know it'd be easier to understand for people, because that's one of the hardest things to explain. I think people look at offside as a really hard one to explain. Honestly, for me, one of the biggest hang-ups with people who are not coming from a soccer background is the clock, because they don't know when the game's going to end, and that frustrates people.
So then when you're on the north end of 45 or the north end of 90, and, so let's say VAR decides that you're going to have X number of minutes that are extra.
5 minutes.
Then, okay, so let's say, 5 minutes extra. If activity continues, whether it's substitution, injury, whatever, then VAR continues to monitor how much additional time is added inside that window as well. They're the ultimate timekeeper leading into the 45th or the 90th minute.
But no,
and then
they're
they
not
continue.
adding more time, because then that's incredibly confusing, because then it's like, all right, we're going to play to 95. Okay, now we're going to play to 96. Now we're going to play to 97. That could get out of hand. It's okay. Then from a logistics standpoint, then what you have to do is VAR has to then have control of the clock, because the way then it would happen is, all right, you say it's playing to 95, and let's say some team goalkeeper wants to take their time and doesn't want to bring the ball back into play, and the ref blows the whistle, gives a yellow card. The ref would have to tell VAR, or VAR would just make the decision unilaterally, whichever way you want to go, and they would just stop the clock. So when the ref blew the whistle, let's say goalkeepers are just, doing their thing, walking around, looking like, do we want to play it back into play? Oh, no, that guy fell down. I can't kick the goal kick right now. No. Oh, I pulled a hamstring. Oh, I got to tie my shoe. Whatever they do, the ref has to blow the whistle. Clock has to stop. They show the yellow card, whatever. And then when the ball's played back in, the clock restarts. Maybe. I don't know. We're spitballing here. The countdown way of doing it that MLS did early on, I don't like that, and I've always felt like when I've done games in college, for example, that have that you don't truly get as much actual game time, because a referee in that scenario is not stopping the clock for every little thing, in the first 5 minutes, first 10 minutes, first 15 minutes. You're only doing it at the end. When you have just stoppage time added back, you're doing it kind of as a lump sum. We always know that the first half you don't get as much stoppage time as the second half. That's just how the game has kind of evolved. But it generally feels like when stoppage time is added, it is a representation of the whole half. When you have the referee stop the clock like they do in college and high school, it feels like the only time they use that is late in the half. So you're not getting the true representation of the amount of time you should have on the field.
Right.
So the countdown clock lends itself to that, because you're not going to do countdown to 0, and then when you get to 0, say, oh, no, we're going to play 5 more minutes. So you can't do the countdown clock with the idea that we just talked about. You've got to do it the traditional way, but you just make the announcement that, okay, we're playing to 95. We're playing 5 more minutes. And then in that 5 minutes, that's where the ref can actually, the referees can stop the clock in the stadium. But then you're playing to a horn. And that's going to then create the situations that, you see in every sport of last-second shots and things like that. It's just an interesting discussion, and I don't know if IFAB or the rest, because you have a lot of games that IFAB has control of and the laws of the game that don't have a stadium clock, that don't have the mechanisms that we've just talked about. So do you want to create parallel rules? And that's something IFAB has generally not wanted to do, and I understand that. But from a better representation and a better situation for the fans, I wonder if it's time to start exploring that.
Yeah, and you were going through a couple of other sports, and Aussie rules football, they count down in each quarter. It starts, I think, at 20, and it goes from 20 to 0, and when you hit 0, horn goes and goes, and then you're done. So there's no added, there's no extra. But I think there is a mechanism in place in the countdown where if there is an injury or something like that, then the ref can sit there, blow his whistle, clock stops, then they can monitor what's going on, and then everything goes back in.
Yeah, so it's normal. It makes sense.
Let's see. Ricky Ricardo is in this morning, and he says, last night marked 1 week since the NBA suspended its season, leading to the domino effect of 1 week ago today. What have you learned during this downtime, and what will be your lasting memory of all of this so far? # Thursday Thoughts.
Well, you brought that in such a big, thoughtful way. What's yours?
Well, I mean, in processing this as I was reading it when it first showed up, the fact that we're there for each other, and it's stuff that we've met, that we talk about on the show, and being there to help support your local business, be there to, support your friends, be there for those in need, those kinds of things. And it's, for me, it's cool to see these things that we talk about put into practice, and being a part of it, and however small we are when it comes to each individual act, but then when you combine all of those acts together, it really turns into something. And you see through social media, whether it's through Facebook posts or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, hey, so and so needs help here, and then you have people just work toward that particular person or that particular business and help them out. It's just, for me, one of the lasting things about this so far is just everyone wanting to help out everyone else as best they can, whether it's a business or whether it's running errands or something like that. That you have these kinds of moments that carry you through in a time like this. Just me being reminded about the wellness of everyone and how we can be there for everybody else during this whole thing.
So speaking of local businesses, our friend Joe Johnstone sent us this one, the Butcher, the Baker in Marietta. Phone number 678-224-1599. They have a call-in menu for the week. Follow them on Instagram for updates. TB Marietta. That's where you'll get the latest. They have the menu posted there. You can call, come in and pick it up. They'll bring it out to you. You are good to go. You can also get their gift cards that will support their staff. They actually did a pretty cool thing. This was starting yesterday. Half the money from all gift cards sold will be given to the staff who are out of work during the next few weeks. You can also order the meals to go, and you can use the family meal ordering link. So TB Marietta on Instagram to check out the menu, and a couple sandwiches, salad, couple meat and twos, good stuff. So the Butcher, the Baker in Marietta is one that is trying to get creative right now. We'll talk about some others as we go this morning, and if you guys out there listening have businesses that are adjusting during this and need a shout out, give us a heads up. Let us know how we can help and spread the word about that.
And that's what we're doing here at the house is, obviously we're doing stuff through the online things like Grubhub, and Grubhub now has an option about delivery where you can sit there and request that the driver text you when they're there at your house. And you can give the explicit instruction of where you want everything placed. If you want it on your front stoop, you can say, okay, leave it on my front step, ring the doorbell when you're here, text me when you're coming, those kinds of things. And what we hear also about gift cards these days is that what you're doing is you're helping that business now, and you're helping the folks who are there now. You can use it later, but you're helping the business now, and that to me is another part of the cool aspects of how folks can help out these days.
I'm glad I'm not losing my mind. I'll get back to the answer real quick. I'm sorry. But Dale Johnson, ESPN, who is our VAR expert that we follow and talk about his Monday VAR thread after every match week in England, because there's always madness to talk about. This is what he said, his reaction to the Premier League statement. He said, the removal of the June 1st clause had to be done, and it would be utter madness to put a definitive new date on that at this stage. Thus, indefinitely serves dual purposes, doesn't tie them to a cutoff date, and gives the impression they will do all they can to finish. But the question that people brought up, and Ben Rumsby, who writes for the Daily Telegraph, said, I wonder what it will do if UEFA decides to stage next season's Champions League and Europa League before the Premier League is able to finish its own season. Could it really play on indefinitely? That's why this stuff is just like, come on, people, get on the same page and put the statements out so you don't confuse people. That's my frustration, because I watched it firsthand with the NBA and the confusion it was creating Wednesday night as we were getting ready at the Estadio Azteca. People were like, oh, they canceled the season. Like, no. They've put a stop right now. And they haven't said what they're going to do yet, because they don't know what they're going to do yet, because nobody knows what's going to happen next. But to do this, you're creating confusion, the indefinitely part. Just like say what Dale Johnson said, like, We want to do all we can to finish the season. We are definitely extending it past that June 1st date. That's not going to be in play here. UEFA has stated this. We will do everything we can to complete a full season by that date. Done. That's reasonable. That's realistic. Everybody would understand at that point if things change and you can't get games in and you have to adjust or you have to extend. All that's good. Just get on the same page, people. Get over your own egos and get on the same page so people out there who are really in need of the answers and an idea of what's coming next. Because I do think setting these dates and these statements are important for people who are out there wondering what's going to be next. Sport is a huge part of our daily lives, and not just us who are really inside of it, but everybody. I mean, it's normalcy. It's a big part of it, and that's maybe what I've learned through all this is how big sport is. And not just for me, I already knew that, but just in general, it's such a galvanizing force. It's such a important part of the daily fabric of conversation, of, when you meet somebody for the first time, it's one of the first things you go to. I mean, for me, like sport and music are two things that I ask people about to get to know them. I feel like it's a big window into who you are, as to what kind of music you like, what kind of music you listen to, how you feel about sports. Those things are really important. And I think this whole process has kind of driven that home for me, in that sport is such a vital part of our daily lives, more so than even me, who has completely believed in the power of sport to change lives. It's even more powerful than I thought. So that's what I've taken away from this, and how things really feel like there's a big absence without it.
Well, and along those lines, Shiva came in this morning and she says, I can't listen live anymore since I have homeschooling to do now in the mornings. But I just wanted to thank you guys for keeping this going and keeping the SDH family together. The show gives my busy mind a break at night when I finally have time to listen.
We try. We're trying to keep our heads together as well. So we appreciate it, Shiva. I don't know. I mean, none of us really know what's coming next, and we're all kind of waiting to see. But I think having that hope of when games are going to, start again, it's important. It's really important. And, I think it's something we're all waiting for. You never think about, maybe you take it for granted. I feel like I probably have, where you never think about, okay, I know on the weekend I'm going to watch everything from MLS. I'm going to watch USL Championship, prepare for Atlanta United 2 games. I know where those days are, but during the week, I mean, just a simple thing, like if I'm at home and I'm studying for the upcoming Atlanta United game and Champions League or Europa League's going on, it'll be on. If there's, cup games in whatever country in Europe that are on in the afternoon, it'll be on. It might be in the background. It might be something I'm not like studying intently, but it's on. And you see a magical moment, you see a great play, things jump out at you. And right now, like, that stuff just isn't there. So it's really weird, and weirder than you would think without sports, without live sports going on right now. It's a bigger miss than I thought it would be.
And yeah, I mean, because I think I'm sitting there and I'm trying to, I'm the guy who is looking at what leagues and what actions are still going on around the world and trying to figure out a way to watch. I'm fairly certain that if I was up at 4:30 this morning, I probably would have watched the Aussie Rules football season beginning game. That's what I would have done, because just so much of my life has been, live sports, whether it's in-person covering or watching on TV, regardless of what it is. Trying to figure out, okay, what countries have stuff going on? How can I watch it? Those kinds of things. And, right now you're waiting with all the other all the other sports fans trying to figure out what leagues are going to be up and running here domestically and when that is. And then, you sit there and take it a day at a time. And I look at my legal pad and I sit there and I have things on my legal pad. I still have to-do lists to do, but it doesn't have anything to do with what's currently on TV, although TV is on, and I am still using it as a way to keep up to date with what's going on the world stage. Uh-oh.
All right, we're going to hit this quote before we go to break from Will Carroll. He is an injury analyst with formerly Sports Illustrated with ESPN. He was on John and Hugh this morning on 92.9 The Game talking about Joseph Martinez's ACL surgery and specifically the doctor where he had it in Pittsburgh. We talked about it on Stoppage Time when Joseph made his post yesterday afternoon. Dr. Fu in the Pittsburgh area, this is what Will Carroll said. Dr. Fu does ACL surgery completely different than most doctors. He is most famous for having done Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who came back very, very well. It is absolutely and completely different from what most American surgeons do. It should get a better result. If Martinez comes back anything like Zlatan, he should be back and potentially much earlier than we expected. So there's some good news for you. That was on the morning show with John and Hugh. That interview will be on radio.com. You can scroll back 24 hours on radio.com and listen to it. Go check that out if you get a chance. But Mike Conti just made that tweet, and I've retweeted it, and now we've read it, and you can feel pretty good about Joseph's recovery from ACL surgery that he had yesterday. We're going to take a quick break, come back, hour number 2 after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski & Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back, hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, Thursday Thoughts edition of the show. Tweet your Thursday thoughts at us, use that hashtag. If you're not able to listen live, go ahead and use the hashtag. Tweet at us later when you get a chance to listen if we've said something insightful, if we've said something that provokes thought, if we've said something that has gotten you angry, if we said something stupid. Respond to us on Twitter at Soccer Down Here whenever you listen to it. Don't worry about if you can't listen live and you feel like you can't be part of the conversation. Go ahead and chime in on Twitter at Soccer Down Here.
React to me. Is this thing on?
That's right, Jim. That's right.
Hello.
No, don't do your Jim Rome impressions and hurt yourself.
Rack me.
What?
when you have a good phone call, or you are anticipating your ego anticipates that you are going to have a fantastic phone call for Jim Rome. You sit there and you go, rack me, and then he'll probably sit there and dump you immediately because of your hubris before you've even brought in your take.
I'm never telling anybody rack me, because that has a whole different connotation where I'm from.
Don't it, though? Yeah, ask Byron Saxton about that.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, that ain't happening. That's a weird thing there, Jim Rome. And what are his people called?
Clones.
Why are they clones?
Because they try to act and or sound like Romy on the air.
That's not a good method. Can we get, right now, in all these crazy times, can we get the tag team of all tag teams, Jim Rome and...
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived.
I want a debate. I want Jim Rome and Stephen A. Smith to debate anything they want.
Oh, that'd be tremendous.
I would pay to watch it right now. Maybe it's just because there's no live sports, but I would pay to watch that.
That would be contact sports, is what that would be.
No. I mean, even when Jim Everett attacked Jim Rome, he's not a contact guy. Stephen A. Smith's not going to fight anybody. They're just going to yell at each other.
You won't get all the advertisers that want to get in their commercial breaks will not, because everything's going to go over.
No, you're not having any commercials. Forget that. You're going to do it on pay-per-view where it's just going to go as long as it goes. You're not going to have a host, because that's going to be pointless to have one. You're going to have somebody off camera just throw a card into the table and say, this is what you're talking about, go. The card's just going to have a topic on it, and they will fight it out. That would be amazing.
Yorba Linda, Rancho Cucamonga, Rancho Palos Verdes, Stanton, are you out there?
Okay.
React to me.
We already
Straight
played
up,
that,
Jim. I know. Pizzeria Zuri this morning says it is a thankful Thursday. Not to be confused with Thanksgiving. Besides, who wants turkey when they can have pizza? Here's the Pizzeria Zuri deal of the day. Order any 16-inch pizza, pay the 12-inch price. Order any 12-inch pizza, pay the 10-inch price. Order any 10-inch pizza, get a second 10-inch pizza for half price. And they're saying, did we mention delivery is free?
Not bad. Not bad at all. Pizzeria Azuri on Twitter. Make sure you're following them.
Two Z's and 3 R's, but not next to each other.
It's spelled as it's spelled.
So, good stuff out of Pizzeria Azuri for the suburban ultras. And it's good to have them as a part of the family for everybody who is outside the perimeter.
Yeah. One thing before we get to Chris Ashley to set it up, because I don't know if everybody saw Doug McIntyre's post yesterday. It went live right after we finished up. It's at Yahoo Sports. He talked about a little bit of maybe some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with MLS. He said a source with knowledge of the situation told Yahoo Sports that MLS could postpone the championship match until late December and play MLS Cup in a neutral, warm weather city. Now, there is a traditionally warm weather city that was not warm weather last time it hosted MLS Cup, but it's got a roof. And that's the one that's about 15 minutes over that way from me, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But there are also other warm weather cities that you could play, and there are some that are neutral sites. This is what got Chris Ashley thinking, correct?
Yep. And
what did Chris Ashley say yesterday?
It's a pretty detailed thread. It's a really good one, but I'm just going to give you the highlights. Chris has broken the idea down into a couple of separate categories. It started off with his poll question. He says, if, and it's a big if at this point, MLS decided they needed to logistically host MLS Cup at a neutral site.
I don't
Does
think
Bank of America...
Hold on. I don't think it's as big of an if at this point. I mean, McIntyre's pretty tied into the league. And he's saying, this is why I don't think it's a big if. he's got a source with knowledge of the situation has said that this is where they could be with it. It makes sense. I actually think it makes a lot of sense because it gives them more time to get as many games in as possible. So I wouldn't even call it a big if. I think it's probably very much on the table right now.
Okay. He wanted to know, and this is what started it, with his poll question, and then he went from there and had 3 separate categories. We'll go through them. Does Bank of America in Charlotte as an incoming venue make the most sense? And he tagged at Charlotte MLS, and he said that his poll options were perfect location or there are better options. And then he broke down his thought into those options.
I mean, are there better locations? Yes, and it's not because I don't like Charlotte. It's because of the weather. When is the Belk Bowl usually played in Charlotte? Very
traditionally New Year's Eve day-ish.
Okay. And what's the weather typically like for that?
Rainy, crappy, cold-ish combination sometimes of all three.
I think the important part's cold-ish because I don't think we can control the amount of rain. It's an outdoor venue. It's going to be cold-ish. It's not going to be Toronto cold like 2010. It's not going to, or 2016, or I think 17 was actually okay. It's not going to be Kansas City 2013 cold, but it's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be short sleeves weather. There are places you could have it that would be short sleeves weather. Miami, obviously. I think Tampa would be a neutral site kind of location you could do it. Sure, I will throw shade at Orlando City, and you could say that you're going to have a neutral site MLS Cup because I don't think they'll be in it. You can have it at the Citrus Bowl if you wanted to. You've got lots of different things. You've got California, all the cities that Jim Rome's a big fan of. You could have it there. You could have it at the Rose Bowls, a celebration of the 25th season of MLS, one of the first homes of Major League Soccer, and a venue that has hosted MLS Cup before. So you've got options. You could play it in San Diego. You could play it in a bunch of different cities that maybe would be – you can't guarantee weather, but – maybe a better weather option than Charlotte. However, I do like the idea of having it in an expansion city. But then are you showing favoritism because there's another expansion city coming in next year that might be a better weather option in Austin, Texas?
So his stadia that he has for his Category 1 would be hosting it at Darrell Royal, where the University of Texas plays football, if you chose Austin, obviously B of A in Charlotte, and then the Dome in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be his 3 ideas for doing it for MLS.
Sacramento's very upset with Chris Ashley, first off, because, I mean, Sacramento's out there too, and venue-wise, I don't know what they would have that would be large to have it at, because you'd want to have it in a big venue. So
you'd be going an hour and a half down the road and doing it at Levi's or something.
That's not Sacramento, so that has nothing to do with this conversation. We're talking about cities coming into MLS. Sacramento is going to join the league. Sacramento Republic have a home. So to be fair, I think they have to be in the vote. I'm not voting for them. Sorry, Sacramento, but we're going to make you feel included. The safest option is St. Louis, to be perfectly honest, because it's a dome. So if you can guarantee that the pitch is going to be of the highest quality, and that would be an expense, that would be the best venue. The safest option outside of that, I think weather-wise, would be Austin. But then you've got to get that venue, which I don't know if you would be able to book, if they would be interested in it. That would be a question. Bank of America would be the easiest, although you do have to deal with Belk Bowl stuff. Depending on how late in December you're planning on having this, you're going to have an issue with that. That would be, all of them have issues. There's no one perfect. Out of the 4 expansion teams coming in, there's not a perfect option. But I do like that line of thinking. I wonder if MLS benefits from picking one and not another one, if that creates an issue. And there's not enough games to go around unless you want to have a game between the losing semifinalists somewhere just to let them play. So each city gets to host something. You have the conference finals neutral site at one of these four. You have a third place game just because somewhere. Maybe that's the one that goes to Sacramento in a smaller venue as just a test run, just a celebration of the 25th season of MLS. And then you have the final in the other one. That way all four get involved in some form or fashion.
His second category would be potential MLS expansion cities. And the ones on his list for that category would be Indianapolis, where you play at Lucas Oil, Vegas, where you play in Allegiant, and then Glendale, playing at State Farm.
I wouldn't categorize anything as potential MLS expansion cities when you're looking at this from an MLS perspective. I think you're just looking at open venues and venues that would make sense. So I wouldn't use it as a way to open the door to potential future expansion. I think that would definitely start showing favoritism. But are there other venues outside of the ones we've mentioned, the MLS expansion cities that are booked and coming in? Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of venues around the country that you could make a safe bet that the weather would be good and that you'd be able to play a final, and it'd be a big venue, so the game would have a big feel. The problem you run into with neutral site games, that's why MLS got away from it, is you run the risk. Let's say you have it in, what were the three options in this one?
The three options here are Glendale, Vegas, and Indy.
Let's say it's Vegas. Let's pick Vegas. And let's say that the final is somehow Columbus Crew versus Vancouver Whitecaps.
Ooh.
Vancouver's not going to go to the final, I know. But let's take a worst-case scenario. How many people are going to be in Vegas?
12.
Well, that's mean. I mean, the Crew have more than 12 people who travel, and the Couch Ultras are going to be there. So
Couch Ultras will stay at home and be on the couch. Why wouldn't they be? They'd be Vegas Ultras on a couch.
They're going to bring a couch. They're going to go to the game. If the Vancouver Whitecaps get to a final, you think the Couch Ultras are going to stay at home? Seriously?
I hope they would go and bring a couch with them.
Yeah.
Get a couch sponsor.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's just a given. So you would have, because you'd have the local soccer community, you would have 15,000, 20,000, something like that. But you might end up with a lot of empty seats. And go back to the 2010 final in Toronto, with miserable weather, and it was Dallas and Colorado, two teams that aren't big teams, that didn't travel a whole lot of people, and it was just kind of a blah game. That's why they got away from it. That's why 2012, the Galaxy got the chance to host by earning it. 2011, it just so happened that the final was booked for Carson, California, and the Galaxy got there. 2012 was the first time they moved to that. So then MLS got a little antsy because of the cold weather in Kansas City in 2013, Toronto in 2016, and that's why they wanted to move MLS Cup up a little bit, along with the upcoming World Cup in 2022, which they've tried to act like wasn't part of the reasoning, but we know it was. This is an opportunity to deal with half of it, to deal with the weather portion, but also it brings into play the possibility of a final that is not a compelling final to the general public, and the potential of two teams that don't have as large of a fan base that would travel for it. And you're going to be potentially with a big venue with not a lot of people interested in the game, and that's a bad look. So that's tough. You know, does that maybe make your thinking go to a smaller venue in a warm weather city, one of the 20 to 30,000 seat venues, but in a place where you think the weather will be good later in December? I think it kind of does, to be a little more conservative about what kind of matchup you might end up with.
And then Chris Ashley had a third category, other potential neutral cities. He included Baltimore, Cleveland, Detroit, San Diego playing at Qualcomm, and then Tampa playing at the Pirate Ship.
But this is the problem. You're bringing in weather in some of those. So,
right.
Like Baltimore, Cleveland, no. Detroit, you could play it at Ford Field. You got a roof. San Diego, obviously, would be potentially a good site. I think San Diego would probably be on the list. Tampa Bay should be on the list. But Baltimore, Cleveland, you just can't because you're potentially making weather worse. If you're going to do that, then just have it at the number 1 seed. And if it's Toronto and you're playing under a foot of snow, you're playing under a foot of snow. That's just where you're at. So that wouldn't solve that problem. Tampa Bay or San Diego would. And those would be 2 cities that I think you'd have to consider. You just run into that risk of a fairly unappealing final to the masses and a small crowd in a big venue, which is not what MLS needs at this point. It's not what Fox would need for that game. I believe this is going to be, and now with potentially the time frame changing, you could be changing what time slots it looks like. But I believe Fox would have probably wanted to do what it did in 2018 and have it in prime time. Well, you're going to want a spectacle. And if you've got an unappealing final at the Pirate Ship in Tampa Bay and 15,000 people in the venue, it's going to look bad. And that's not what anybody's going to want for the final. So you've got to think that way too. And that does factor into it. And that complicates it a little bit.
Matt Wagner has even added MLS Cup at the Superdome in New Orleans for a neutral site idea.
It's interesting. I know the women's national team has played at the Superdome. I don't know the width of that field off the top of my head. They haven't had many soccer matches, so you got the roof, you're good, but the size of the pitch is a question.
Yes.
The size of the venue is also a question. And that, I keep kind of coming back to it as a bigger question because you just don't know what the final would be. And that's the scary thing about a neutral site venue. You might get one that just, look, there's not going to be a whole lot of people there. And that's not what the league needs at this point.
Katie Weaver this morning, she says, inspired by the hashtag Kits Out Challenge around Twitter yesterday, a question for us and for the listeners.
Okay.
Do you wear team kits, a.k.a. the shirt, to play actual soccer, pickup, rec league, etc., or do you save it for attending matches or everyday wear? Hashtag Thursday Thoughts.
I have worn kits when I played. I haven't played in years because of a concussion I had, so that part doesn't really apply to me anymore. But I did. I didn't wear kits that I especially prized in those games.
Yes.
I wore kits that I didn't mind if they got dirty or ripped up or whatever. I wear kits occasionally out just as casual wear. I wore a Maradona kit yesterday. I like more kind of retro kits in that regard. I don't really go with the current stuff. But yeah, I don't go full kit. I'm not a full kit wanker. I don't go full kit wanker with the shorts and the socks. That's a little much.
No. But, with the collection that I have of lower division stuff, I do wear it around the house. I do wear the T-shirts around the house, but I do not wear them, if you want to call whatever it was that I was doing playing. I stood around a lot, but no, I didn't wear it as something while I would play the sport or something competitive like that. It's always in that casual sense.
Yeah, you've got the really ugly Bolton kit. That's horrendous.
The olive drab Bolton kit?
Yeah, it's just an awful color for a soccer kit.
Maybe that was why it was £5 when I bought it.
One thing yeah, exactly. One thing that you have to keep in mind a little bit here is terminology. So I actually learned this not that long ago because somebody asked one day, and I had to go back and look. The English terminology of kit, which we typically haven't used here in the United States, that is the whole package. The kit is the jersey, the shorts, the socks. It's the kit that you would wear to play in. If I'm not mistaken, generally just the jersey, like we would call it in our parlance, is just called the shirt. They don't really like the jersey word.
Yeah.
They get a little hung up on that sometimes. But yeah, the kit would be the full thing, not just the jersey. When we're talking about the jersey, I guess we call it a jersey, and then we get called dumb Americans when we say that, even though what else are you going to call it? Just a shirt?
Yeah.
It's not just a T-shirt. It's not
Yeah,
just
because baseball jersey, football, American football jersey.
We call it a
so
jersey. We know that. I'm saying like the kit idea is not just the shirt.
it's the full thing.
It's all of it. It's the uniform, as we would call it.
Yes.
The craziness with different terminologies with this game. People get really bent out of shape if you call a pitch a field and stuff, and it's dumb.
Also this morning, Ricky has linked us to what's going on at Good Word Brewing up in Duluth. And they have, courtesy of Paul Milliken over at Fox 5 here in Atlanta, they've transformed, Good Word Brewing has transformed themselves into a makeshift soup kitchen to help feed those in need. Good stuff.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great to hear. Some other businesses to mention real quick. Pizzeria Azzurri that we talked about with their deals going on. Follow them on Twitter, Pizzeria Azzurri. East 48th Street Market. You can call in your order, 770-392-1499. Tell them when you're coming. You can prepay with a credit card, pull up to the curb, get what you have ordered. Awesome deal with them in Decatur. Nick Alifi vouches for them. Mike Conti vouches for them. That's pretty good reviews in my book. The Brew House is running curbside service generally until 9 o'clock each night. Make sure you're following them on Facebook for the latest at the Brew House Cafe. A couple breweries that are friends of the soccer community here in Atlanta. Second Self, they have drive-up-to-go sales of all their canned products during operation hours. It's 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can call, you can place an order, you can tell them when you're coming. They'll have it ready. They do have a legal limit of 1 case per day. Same limit applies at Wild Heaven. Both of their locations, Avondale and West End, you can get beer to go. You can get their Tremolo Nitro cold coffee. 1 to 6 at Avondale, 12 to 8 at West End. The awesome restaurant at West End, Comida Fina, is also open for food to go at that location. So make sure, like, as places, you know, that you frequent, talk about what they're doing going forward. Give us a heads up so we can spread the word and try to keep as many local businesses going during this time as we can.
Yeah, on all of our social media, the Facebook page, our Twitter, Instagram, wherever you spread the news, spread it to all of it. But just let everybody know what you see, where you go, all that stuff. Because ever since we've pretty much been in self-quarantine, we have tried to, here at Office HD, invest in local businesses and get their food delivered to the house, or I've gone and picked up for curbside, those kinds of things. And that's the plan until further notice.
Well, I mean, we do have to be a little transparent here when it comes to Office HD and the food options. Nobody wants you to cook anything.
No.
Nobody wants that.
No, the boss doesn't even want that.
No. She's very intelligent. She doesn't want that.
No, unless it's putting something into a microwave where I physically read the instructions before putting something in the microwave and remembering to take it out of the box to put it in the microwave so it cooks on its own.
Yeah, when you say you have to remember to take it out of the box, I'm even skeptical of that. You probably just need to let the professionals handle it and just stay out of the food preparation world.
Damn right.
Good grief.
Yep. Michael Head, on his Thursday thoughts, he says, the question of MLS Cup at a neutral site makes no sense. If San Jose, New England met for a final in Tampa, less than 10,000 would show up. It's a bad idea. Just keep the site as it is now, a home matchup for the better record. It is what it is.
I'm generally of that mind, too. Even if you have it The reason why, let's walk back a little bit as to why this is even a conversation. 2013 in Kansas City, it was Real Salt Lake and Sporting Kansas City. I want to see what the temperature was for that one. 28 degrees, 6 degrees, or no, sorry. That was 2016. 22 was actually the 2013 final. 2016 was set to be 28 degrees. I think it ended up being around that. I've seen some reports saying it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit for Kansas City. Javier Morales talked about it after that match that he played in. He said about it, talking about potentially going to a neutral venue, he said, "I believe so. It's the best. Soccer is better if we play in the warm. I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk at halftime. I was shaking. I don't know. Maybe the league has to see that. It's not an excuse, but I think it's better for soccer to play in the warm." Talking about temperatures. And you have a lot of places. Maybe Houston, Dallas, LA. You have a lot of places to choose and go play there. So that, along with the 2016 final a few years later, that was another miserable cold night. It didn't make for a great game. That 2010 game in Toronto, it was not a good game. I understand the home field advantage side of it, and I get it. But you also do have to think a little bit about the spectacle. And if you're going to go later in December than these games were played, the Kansas City game was played on, I believe, December 7th, 2013. So around that time that the game was played here in Atlanta in 2018. If you want to guarantee a good environment to play in, you've got to think warm weather or dome. If you don't care and you just want the number one seed to have it, you run the risk of a bad product. I mean, that game in Kansas City, there was drama. The game in Toronto in 2016, there was drama because it's a final. Was it good soccer? No, it was not good at all. The 2010 game was awful between Colorado and Dallas. Awful. Is that what MLS wants? For more people in the stands, although, I mean, you're not even guaranteed at times with some venues, with some home teams, that you would have a huge crowd in the stands if the weather is horrible. It's a risk to not have a neutral site venue. It's also a risk to have a neutral site venue. There's no real perfect answer here. I don't know. I mean, you would run the risk of New England winning and being the number one seed and hosting MLS Cup against Seattle in Foxborough at the end of December, where I think the crowd would be okay, but it could be an awful game on national TV on Fox. And that's what that 2016 game was. And I wonder if that one is going to stick more in the mind because it was a Saturday night nationally televised game on Fox that wasn't a good advertisement for the league. The atmosphere was good because the Toronto fans really brought it, even though they were freezing. But the game was not good. Are we at a point now where we're okay with the drama of the game selling it as opposed to the quality of the game? I'd like to think we are. I'm not 100% sure if the league and the TV partners feel that way. And I guess that's what I would be interested in hearing about is, if you're going to go later in December and you bring more weather potentially into the mix, would it be Fox that would be pushing for either a warm weather site because they want to guarantee that the game could be as high of a quality as possible, or do they want to stay with the top seed getting it because they would expect that the atmosphere would look better? Which are they looking for? That's going to be an interesting conversation if it's had.
Yeah, you're looking at showcasing the sport for the last match of the year and what satisfies that in this environment. Do you want a full building? Do you want, obviously, you want the best of both worlds. You want a full building and you want to have a great game. But if you're in a colder climate, are you going to get a full building? Are you going to get the atmosphere? Are you going to get that showcase? And that's the that's the juggling that has to be thought out here by both the league and the TV execs, and what they want to do about it.
Yeah, again, there's no perfect answer. You run the risk either way of bad situations, and we'll just have to see. Announcement just came out a few minutes ago from Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. She has signed an executive order effective at midnight, limiting restaurants to takeout service, closing bars, gyms, etc. That has now been made public. That's going to go into effect at midnight tonight.
Also on the board this morning, going back to our discussions about jerseys and kits, Kefsey. Jersey's a place, though I'm sure we won't be able to get many to say top and bottom. The misunderstandings may never end.
See, I cannot. I don't know. I've never referred to a jersey, a shirt, as a top or a bottom. That feels weird to me.
I've heard top, but I don't use top.
Yeah, I don't use it. No, I've heard it. I mean, if you've listened to games from England, you've heard it, of course, and I know you have. So
tug on the top. Yeah,
heard it, huh?
Yeah. Tug on the top calls the foul. Yeah.
Yes, we've heard these things. It's not part of our parlance. I would call it a shirt. I think shirt is fairly safe, and everybody can get on board with that one. Shorts, maybe that one's a little bit harder for some people to get on board with. I don't know. I just grew up hearing, sports uniform tops being called jerseys across all sports. I guess except for hockey, because they call it a sweater, and if you don't call it a sweater, they get bent out of shape. So and it's not a sweater; it's a freaking mesh jersey. It's not a sweater.
No. I still call hockey jersey sweaters.
It's not a sweater. Hasn't been a sweater for decades.
Yeah, but that you're going back to the history of that particular piece of clothing. So I've always referred to hockey as sweaters.
Yeah, that feels a little uppity to me.
So I'm uppity hockey guy.
Yeah, you are. I mean, you've got at least a honorary Canadian passport.
Honorary uppityness?
No, honorary Canadian.
Well, yeah, 3 years of working for one of the networks up there, and
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, hey, didn't have to leave this part of the country though. That was it was fun covering hockey full time here in the Southeast. It's like, yeah, go to Tampa and cover a playoff series. Okay. Darn, have to do that.
Very nice.
Yeah, and that's what it was. It's like, okay, if there's a story here in the Southeast, go do it. Okay. Katie Weaver, about wearing nice jerseys and stuff. She says, yeah, definitely don't go full kit to your Tuesday Silverbacks Rec League game.
No, you don't want to do that because you're going to get who knows what pellets and crap out of that field that's going to end up on you. They have replaced the turf out there, which shocked a few people when I told them that, because those outer fields were basically like playing on a thin carpet on concrete.
Yes.
For a long time. It's probably why my knees and ankles still hurt, and I haven't played out there in 10 years. So, the stadium field has been replaced many times. I know it was replaced fairly recently. The problem that they've always had, and it's what happens to a lot of soccer venues, you're able to get the land because it's in a floodplain. And when it rains hard, it floods. I mean, it's kind of the whole point. And if you haven't seen the stadium pitch underwater before at Silverbacks, oh my God!
Oh.
I've seen pictures where water gets up underneath the turf, and it looks like a wave of the turf up in the air. It's crazy. One of the weirdest nights that I had at Silverbacks Park working with the Silverbacks in the NASL was a game against the Cosmos. I believe. When was it? I think it was late 2015. Yeah, it was like late summer of 2015, not that late in the season. 1-0 Atlanta was leading, and Yeah, it was 1-0 Atlanta leading. I think it was right before halftime that it started lightning in the area. And, of course, you got to stop the game, so everybody goes to the tunnels. Then, on top of the lightning, it starts pouring down biblical rain. So the game is delayed for a while, first because of the lightning. Well, then, by the time the lightning is gone, the field has a layer of water on it. Not puddles on the field, like a layer of water on the field that didn't drain because the drainage was terrible.
Yes.
Game's delayed. We're down in the tunnel, and the conversation, I think the statute of limitations has passed on this. The conversation that was going on was just craziness because Atlanta's leading 1-0. The Cosmos are in town. Giovanni Savaresi's with the Cosmos. Cosmos were one of the top teams in the NASL. They didn't want to play. They were like, the field's got water on it. Not like puddles of water. The field has a layer of water on it. Like, we don't want to come back out and play. Atlanta had the lead. They wanted to play. So you got back and forth. You've got Savaresi and his people calling the league office. You've got Atlanta calling the league office. You've got debates. You've got arguments. You've got all kinds of stuff. No idea when we're going to get to play. And finally, the league is like, no, you're going to finish the game. You're going to play it out because they're going to clear the water. So they get the four-wheelers out there. And, if you've seen games on turf, you have the trays that come behind a four-wheeler that help kind of rake up the pellets.
Yeah.
So they've got those going through, trying to spread the water enough to where it would drain and get off the field. You've got people out there with brooms, squeegees, whatever you could get to try to push the water off the pitch. If I remember right, the game got stopped probably about 8:15 and restarted about 3.5 hours later with maybe 5 minutes left in the first half. And you then, I guess, you had to have some kind of a halftime, so it was ridiculous. You come back out, you play for 5 minutes. Atlanta gives up a goal. The Cosmos tie it up. And then it goes to halftime. And by this point, because of the relationship with the stadium and the neighborhood, you couldn't have PA announcements. You couldn't have music. So you could have the lights on. So you come back and you play the second half, and I think the Cosmos ended up winning 3-1. So they didn't want to play. They wanted to come back and replay it. Atlanta didn't want to do that. They wanted to play because they had the lead, and they ended up losing, and the Cosmos ended up winning. I would love to have the conversation with Giovanni Savaresi about that night. I think he would be laughing hysterically.
And there would be some colorful metaphors, I'm sure, that would be associated with that laughter.
There were a lot of colorful metaphors down in the tunnel that night. I can tell you that much.
Swixter is in this morning, and he says, and this is all in caps, best period, Silverbacks period, game period, ever period. Didn't end until 1 or 2 a.m., but all the Terminus Legion members in attendance stayed until it ended.
Yeah, I think it was about 1. If I remember right, it ended about 1 o'clock. So, yeah, it might not have even got started again until after midnight. There were maybe 200 people there by the end, maybe. A lot of people left after the Cosmos took a big lead. I mean, that was just the funniest part about it to me, and I hate to kick our dearly departed Silverbacks in this way, but, I mean, they were so adamant about wanting to play the game because they had the lead, and they lost the lead and lost the game when the other team didn't want to finish the game. They wanted to come back and do it another time, and it just came back to bite you. It was just ridiculous.
Yep. A couple of other soccer over there notes quickly that have come across. The National League, the fifth tier of English football,
fifth tier and down, right?
Yeah, fifth tier and down. They are planning to see if they can get assistance from the FA, the number that they're looking for, and this is from an article in The Athletic, looking for £17 million for the 68 clubs that are a part of fifth tier on down to help them through what's going on right now with no revenue, no game days, those kinds of things. So one of the folks in the National League did the math and was going to submit a proposal, and it came out to about £250,000 per franchise. So they're going to look to see if the FA can help the National League out to the sum total of £17 million. But managing director of one of the teams that is in the National League in the fifth tier thinks that they're going to have to go to the government for economic assistance because they don't think that the FA is going to be able to help them in this matter, and that the government would have to, the British government would have to help out in that regard for the lower divisions.
Ugh. All right, one of the leagues that's been going on for a while, about 30 minutes ago, they have stopped Turkey.
They finally, okay.
Turkish league, and this is from Dr. Mehmet Kasapoglu. As a result of the coronavirus evaluation meeting held under the chairmanship of Mr. President, and following the meetings, it was decided to postpone the handball, volleyball, basketball, and football leagues in the context of the precautionary measures taken. So Turkey has suspended play.
Yeah, Fifth Pro had gone to the Turkish Premier League, and they wanted them to stop playing, and so now that's out as of about a half hour ago. Got news. Yes, yeah, really. There are still, I think, 10 other nations right now that are currently still playing various and sundry levels of competitions and club schedules, things like that. Most of them are behind closed doors, and it is clubs in Central America and Eastern Europe for the most part. There is some stuff going on in the South Pacific and in Australia. But right now it's down to about 10 countries that are still having action behind closed doors.
What else do we have on Twitter?
I was going to do one more piece of news before we went back to Twitter, and it has to do with the Scottish Premier League. And Scottish Premier League club Heart of Midlothian have asked, this is from Reuters, they've asked all staff, including players, to take a 50% wage cut as they gear up to face the time without football because of the coronavirus outbreak. Chairwoman Ann Budge said there'd be no income from matches during the stoppage, while a ban on large gatherings would impact non-match day business streams. Club statement is out. This reduction in income is not sustainable without taking immediate action to cut staff costs and overhead. We've asked all full-time employees, managers, coaches, players, and player backroom staff with effect from the beginning of April to accept a 50% cut in their monthly salary.
And a club like Hearts that has not been in the best of financial situations leading up to this, these are the ones that are going to get hit hard by it. And in the top leagues in Europe, you've probably got most of the first divisions that should be okay. Second divisions, you're going to have some different conversations, but in that next tier of top flight leagues in Europe, you're going to have a situation like Hearts, where, I mean, that's a first division club in the Scottish Premiership that is going to be hit hard financially and is going to have a lot to figure out. So that's where we're at right now. You've got leagues like the Premier League that is trying to find their pathway forward. You've got others that are trying to figure out how to deal with the here and now financially. You've got governing bodies that really don't know what's going to happen just yet. And that's where you're at.
Hearts went into administration back in 2013. Their owner at the time, his business empire collapsed. And so they were close to being taken away from Scottish Premier League football 7 years ago. And so now, obviously, those memories are still in Hearts fans' minds going forward.
What else do we have on Twitter before we go?
Alex Cuppers wanted to know about, and actually there are two things basically that are tied to the New England Patriots.
Okay.
Adam Schefter says that Tom Brady is undergoing his physical this morning in New York City, according to Jeff Darlington.
What's that all about?
Because That's Schefter. I'm working on an Adam Schefter impression.
Man, that needs a little work, John.
Needs a lot of work. But Jeff Darlington from NFL Network says Tom Brady's having his physical this morning in New York City. So Cuppers wanted to know if I thought that it still wasn't real that TB was going to TB.
Boom shakalaka!
And so I responded to Alex, and I said he still hadn't signed a deal, has he?
Next.
No, we're caught up. It was Ricky Ricardo wanted to know the other note about the New England Patriots, where I was making fun of Jarrett Stidham being the answer currently in New England, and I'm
why
like,
you gotta make fun of Jarrett Stidham?
Because he ain't no NFL quarterback. He was having issues as a college quarterback. The second he was getting any kind of pressure, this is the personification of Jarrett Stidham under pressure.
Man,
in college. He ain't the answer in New England. Sorry, Patriot fan. I bet you they're still waiting for the market to even out a little bit where they can, chase somebody like an Andy Dalton, a Cam Newton, or a Jameis Winston. Although I think Jameis is probably going to end up in Jacksonville.
Well, we talked about this on 92.9 The Game last night with John Chuckerman.
Oh, how was that?
That was fun. It flew by. It was 4 hours that felt like about an hour and a half. But we got into it, and there's a couple of questions when it comes to New England. I mean, is Belichick going to hang around for a while, or is he going to, kind of do another year and be gone?
I think I'm going to do another year, though.
Well, it depends. I mean, because my hypothesis was if New England likes a quarterback at the top of the draft, they might sacrifice a lot to go get him.
Yeah,
and build that relationship. Or if they like somebody who's a little bit further down, I mean, maybe they can wait it out, and there's somebody.
Or Justin Herbert might be on their list.
That's a name that came up. And do they do that, and then that revitalizes Belichick? I think that's a better route if they want to keep him around for a while than going out to get Andy Dalton.
Oh.
I mean, Cam Newton's a different conversation because if he's healthy, he's a very different quarterback than he has been injured.
No doubt.
Beat up. Can he get back mentally from all of the issues he's had with the health side of things? That's a big question to have. And he's one that's going to be affected by this right now with players. I mean, that's why you haven't had announcements made. I mean, you want to throw shade about Tom Brady signing a contract, but you're having to get really creative figuring out physicals right now, because it's not like he can just hop on a plane, go to Tampa Bay, go meet the team doctors, do the physical, done, announce the signing. Mm-mm. No, you're having to figure out like either contracts that are conditional based off when you can do the physical, or finding a neutral doctor that is approved by the league and approved by both teams before these deals get done. And that's why there's these hang-ups. It's awkward, it's weird, it's the time we're in right now.
And Domer, one of the Auburn alums that listens to the show, says Stidham couldn't survive. He says Stidham couldn't survive behind one of the best O-lines in the SEC, so he absolutely can't handle the NFL.
Poor Jarrett Stidham.
Jarrett Stidham. Hey, Charlie Whitehurst made a career of wearing a cap and holding a clipboard.
And nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
Checks cash just the same.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably a little bit smaller, but that's okay.
Hey, but God, Charlie Whitehurst. I want to say he was a quarterback. Sorry, he was a clipboard. He was a clipboard holding hat wearer into his late 30s. So I think he had a 15-year career doing that.
That's a great career, and he's probably a quarterback's coach or something now.
No, it's seriously good work if you can get it. And there were times when, as a Charger fan, when Charlie Whitehurst was called into play on those rare instances, and he was a serviceable quarterback.
That's what you want out of the backup.
The nickname for Charlie Whitehurst, this I did not know. Frequent nickname for Charlie Whitehurst, Clipboard Jesus.
Oh, I've heard that, yeah.
But, yeah, San Diego, Seattle, San Diego again, Tennessee, Indianapolis, Cleveland in 2016. completed in 25 games in his entire career, 11 years, 25 games, attempted a total of 396 passes.
Man, that's
good
not
work
much.
if you can get it.
Yeah, seriously.
And half of those came in 2014 when he played 7 games for Tennessee.
Okay, we're going to finish with this one. We're not going to finish with Charlie Whitehurst. Sorry, clipboard Jesus.
No.
We're going to finish with the National Soccer Hall of Fame here in the United States. Voting for the class of 2020 is out. Brian Strauss over at SportsIllustrated.com, SI.com, has an article pointing out something that is borderline ridiculous, according to U.S. soccer players, which I would agree with. USSoccerPlayers.com has a breakdown of this. Steve Cherundolo is not
there you
in
go.
the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
What? Steve Cherundolo is one of the best defenders the United States has ever produced. He is not in the Hall of Fame. He has been eligible since 2017 to be elected into the Hall of Fame. He is not in the Hall of Fame.
How has this not happened?
Because the process is stupid. The process is a mess. The process is dumb. It's also complicated because you're dealing with all kinds of stuff. First off, the Hall of Fame has changed over the years. Like, you've got NASL players that are inducted. You've got, since MLS started, no non-U.S. men's national team MLS player has been inducted. So you've got NASL guys who were inducted in the past, but now if you're not a U.S. player in MLS, you're not getting inducted. Raul Diaz-Arce, Marco Echeverri, Carlos Ruiz, Mauricio Cienfuegos, Carlos Valderrama, Jaime Moreno, they're not getting in, and that's strange. Cherundolo is a national team level talent who was one of the best ever, not getting in. Like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Why can you not get these things figured out and create a process for an actual National Soccer Hall of Fame that is representative of what it should be? Last year on the player ballot, one inductee, Abby Wambach. Abby Wambach somehow on the ballot left off by 19% of voters. What? This is not the stupid baseball Hall of Fame where it's like, well, we all know this player should get in, but we don't want this player to get in unanimously because that would set a bad precedent. Just shut up. Just shut up. This is dumber.
Restricted.
This is not one moron out there who's trying to make a name for themselves and say, yep, I'm the one who didn't put Abby Wambach on the list because I don't think she scored enough goals.
Well, good. You don't get to vote anymore. You're an idiot.
But no, that's the thing. It's not one person. It's 19% of the voters didn't put her on the ballot, which is insane. Settle down. Hold on. Only 3 players were inducted in 2018. So 2019, you had 1 player inducted. What? 2018, you had 3. And Cindy Parlow-Cone was 1, and she came from the veterans ballot. The one before that, Brad Friedel. And you had a number of women's national team players you got in. So that you have a lot of things with the way this is set up. You have the women's game to cover. You have a veterans ballot. You have players who did not play domestically in the United States but played for the U.S. men's national team. You have players who played domestically in the United States but are not eligible to play for the U.S. men's national team. And you have MLS talents that are national team players who played in MLS. So you have a bunch of different categories that are really hard to compare across the board. That's what's difficult. You have from the NASL, and you probably also have to look at this, that the voters and the makeup of the voting body has dramatically changed over the years. So from the NASL era, you have Pelé, you have Giorgio Canaglia, you have Franz Beckenbauer in the National Soccer Hall of Fame in the United States. Canaglia is a different conversation because of how many goals he scored over a long period of time in the NASL. Beckenbauer played 4 maybe 5 seasons in the NASL. Pelé played 3, and honestly 2.5 if you want to be real about it. Jaime Moreno played for a long, long time in Major League Soccer and scored a ton of goals. And he's not in. And Pelé, who is Pelé, we know. But in the United States, he only played 2.5 years. So he's in the National Soccer Hall of Fame. Whereas a player, Pelé is a legendary player, and he's a superstar celebrity when he came into the NASL. Well, there's another one of those guys in David Beckham, who is not in the National Soccer Hall of Fame, played longer in the domestic league, won more titles. Pelé won 1, Beckham won 2, and made another final. It's so inconsistent in the way that this is set up. So the players on the ballot, now this is the way it works, so you understand this. Every voter can pick up to 10 players. If a candidate is listed on 2/3 of the ballots, they're elected. Anybody who fails to secure at least 5% of the vote is dropped from the ballot in the future. The players' ballot is players who have been retired for 3 years, but not more than 10. They had to have been capped by the U.S. for 20 times, or spent at least 5 seasons in a U.S. First Division league and earned 1 Best 11 nod. So, again, as we said, Pelé wouldn't even qualify for it the way it's currently constructed. The voting pool is Hall of Fame members, all present and former national team coaches on the men's and women's side. So Jurgen Klinsmann gets to vote. That's great. Active MLS and NWSL coaches with at least 4 years experience. MLS and NWSL commissioners and members of management. The USSF president, Cindy Parlow-Cone, and CEO, which is no one right now. That group numbers 225 people. They're joined by approximately 75 members of the media. Okay. So you have to get 2/3 of the ballots to get elected. Last year, only 1 player did. This year, I'm going to go through this really quick because we're up against it, and we can get deeper into this tomorrow. David Beckham is on the list. Greg Berhalter is on the list. And as a player, Greg Berhalter should absolutely be considered. Carlos Bocanegra is on the list and should be in, flat out. Scrolling through players who jump out to me that I think should be on the list. Lauren Cheney Holiday on the women's side. I think she has a very strong campaign to be part of the Hall of Fame. Steve Cherundolo, mentioned him. Scrolling through. Frankie Haydick is on the list. Haydick is a player with a ton of caps. Thierry Henry is on the list. I don't think he should get in because of his time with the Red Bulls. It's just me. Stuart Holden, Eddie Johnson, probably too many injuries with the national team to get to this level. Kate Markgraf is on the list. She would absolutely be a candidate on the women's side. Pablo Mastroeni, with all of the caps he had, all of his play in MLS, he's got to be a strong candidate. Clint Mathis probably falls into the Holden Johnson category of injuries, maybe derailing it. Heather Mitz, long career on the women's side. Is it good enough to get into the Hall of Fame? Maybe not. Jaime Moreno should be in the Hall of Fame in my book. There's just not a question about that with what he did in MLS. Kat Reddick, Whitehill, I think she is another one who is really, really close on the women's side. Carlos Ruiz is one on the MLS side that should be in. Hope Solo should be a no-brainer. She should absolutely be in. Josh Wolf is borderline, but probably not going to get enough to get in. But that's a lot of players just running through a list of about 50, 60 names that should get in. And there's other candidates that are interesting conversations. So Brian Strauss, the ones he said should be inducted, and we'll leave it with this before we go for the day. David Beckham, Carlos Bocanegra, Steve Cherundolo, Frankie Haydick, Jaime Moreno. Steve Ralston is one that he has, which I'd be completely fine with. Great MLS-level talent. Only 36 caps. Little bit of just being just barely on the outside of the national team picture, but a 14-year MLS career. He was the all-time assist leader when he retired. I'm completely fine with him getting in if he does. And Hope Solo is the other one that Brian Strauss has. So Solo, Ralston, Moreno, Haydick, Cherundolo, Bocanegra, Beckham. as Brian Strauss's should be inducted. There is a veterans ballot as well for players who have been retired for 10 or more years, and you've got a list of candidates for that. Marco Echeverry's in there, Chris Armas is in there, Frank Klopas is in there, Shep Messing is in there. A player that you know, John, from your indoor days, Steve Zungel.
Oh.
First year of eligibility, he's in there.
There are a lot of folks on that ballot that I think deserve to get in that have not had the opportunity to get
There's
in
a
yet,
lot that have
and
backed
have not been
up that
voted
should
in.
have already been in.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Exactly.
And now you get people saying, okay, well, I get 10 votes, and I'm not going to go back to Jaime Moreno because he should have already got in. If he's not in now, he shouldn't get in. No, you need to change that because people need to look at this with a new set of eyes because it's been a stupid process over the years. And I do think MLS needs its own Hall of Fame, too, that they need to do themselves. That should happen.
Yeah. News out of Major League Soccer before we go.
All right.
And this has been...
It's news, right?
Yes, it's news. All right. This is released by individual clubs, but it comes from Major League Soccer. In accordance with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's guidance to postpone events involving more than 50 people over the next 8 weeks, Major League Soccer has extended the postponement of its matches during this period of time. MLS remains focused on playing the entire 2020 season and is evaluating all options, including pushing back the end of the season and playing MLS Cup in December, as the league did prior to the 2019 season. The league is also identifying other available dates throughout this process. MLS will continue to prioritize the safety of our fans, players, employees, and partners, and to coordinate with federal and local public health authorities, as well as other sporting organizations. End of paragraph.
And that's what we figured would happen yesterday when USL made a similar kind of announcement. And I'm glad that they have made it clear that pushing MLS Cup back into December is on the table and could happen. I think MLS has handled this really, really well, better than other soccer leagues in other parts of the world that are creating confusion. This is pretty clear for what you know at this point. You're going to push back, you're going to follow CDC guidelines, and you will still be aiming to play a full schedule. And if that means MLS Cup is in December like it's been in the past, then that's what it means.
And I like the idea of the Hall of Fame discussion for tomorrow to lead things off as a part of tomorrow's show.
Yeah, we'll dig deeper into it, and we'll rant and rave some more a little bit about that. So go ahead and get your ranting and raving in on Twitter, @SoccerDownHere. Let us know what you're thinking if you hear this later on. Bring it to the table for tomorrow's discussion. We'll be back at 9 o'clock in the morning for SDH. Later today, be on the lookout @SoccerDownHere on Twitter. We're going to try to set up a watch-along late this afternoon and have it up. So if you're not able to join us live, you can watch it later. For the 86 World Cup final, Argentina and West Germany. In my opinion, the greatest World Cup final of all time. So stay tuned. Roughly around 4 o'clock Eastern, but I want to make sure we can get it done the way I would like to, the easiest way, and we'll figure all that out as we go. So thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Thanks for tweeting at us. We really, really appreciate everybody staying connected as best as they can at this point. So take care of yourselves. We'll talk to y'all soon. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.